Hello and welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy, where your dreams are our mission. This is Yatharth here. So today we are going to discuss the topic, which is same-sex marriages. So as we know, it has been a hot topic and currently much in news. So we'll be seeing this. We'll be seeing the constitution or constitutional aspects related to this, arguments both in favor and against the institution of same-sex marriage. And we'll see what is the way forward. We'll also note down some important lines for answer writing and understand the institution of marriage according to the Indian background. So this is the article where I have taken this from, this news. So Supreme Court same-sex marriage hearing, what is the center's stance on the matter? So right now we can see that the opinions are divided into two parts. One is the central government's opinion and another is the Supreme Court's opinion. And the issue that is being focused on is same-sex marriage. So the issue in highlight is of marriage. The institution of marriage is both has all type of prospects which are both social, legal, economic and otherwise. Alright, so this is the first thing. Second thing is that in general center is against and Supreme Court is pro. This is the general outcome of the debate that has been followed till yet. So we have both kind of arguments already, as we can see the debate. So we will see these both. And what is the middle way and what is the hindrance or challenges involved. That why is it a debate at all? What are the challenges involved? So first of all, we need to understand two things, that what is marriage and why do people marry at all? Their biological prospect. One more thing to remember, that in the last videos we have covered several topics. We started with the Keshwanand Bharati case. We moved on to the population and demographic potential. We also covered the fraternity issue. So we are covering all type of topics, whether they are legal, whether they are social and economic, whether they are socio-economic or social basically. So this is also one such topic. So as you will see more videos, you will have a pattern developed in your mind eventually, with which you will be able to tackle the mains or such questions, whether they are from GS1 or 2, very easily from people or society or other such sections. So let us see the biological aspect first of all of the institution of marriage. So there are few things that are common to the institution of marriage in all the societies. First is that it involves two individuals. Second thing is that there is a change of place after marriage. Third, it involves some kind of reproduction or family building. And fourth, it involves some kind of companionship. So these are the four things. Two individuals. Now these all are basically not connected to gender, but let's see, it is very evident that the heterosexual people or heterosexual gender basis are most suitable biologically for 3-4 things out of these, such as change of place, reproduction, family building, and companionship. So this is what we call as natural institution of marriage. So center is also saying that this is the accepted method of marriage in the society. Let us see one more thing, which is why do people marry at all? What is the reproduction aspect? So one thing is that we all have various kind of cells onto which our life depends. These cells are divided into two parts, the somatic cells and sex cells or gametic cells. So somatic cells are basically diploid cells which keep on dividing via the process of mitosis. Now when we talk about the gametic cells, each parent or each partner forms a haploid cell as gametes, with which they contribute half their DNA. There is a process involving in this formation and mixing up. This process is known as meiosis. And this is where these gametes mix in each other by the process of fertilization, which happens during sex and later on conceivement. And this gives birth to a new baby. So to further the species, to keep the population going on, plus for genetic variability via meiosis and then remixing, fertilization. So in order to do these two things, first is the continuation of the generation, second is genetic diversity. So these two things, having a heterosexual parent is must. Alright, so this is the biological basis of marriage and reproduction. Let us now come to the social and legal part. So what is the context here? The Supreme Court of India began hearing a series of petitions seeking solemnization of the same-sex marriage under the Special Marriage Act. The Special Marriage Act of 1954 provides a civil form of marriage for couples who cannot marry under their personal law. So in India, marriage is governed by various personal laws, whether it is Hindu Marriage Act or Muslim Marriage Act or whatever other marriage acts. So if they cannot marry through these acts, or their marriage is not recognized as per these acts, then they can marry through a Special Marriage Act. So there are various petitions which want to include same-sex marriage under this act. So in the proceedings, the center advised the Supreme Court to defer the case to Parliament on the matter, stating that the law cannot be revised to permit same-sex marriage again. Because the law and the society that had been created in India, every law that there is, whether it relates to property, divorce, adoption, health. So what happens, marriage is a very special institution, as you can see. When there are two people, they connect their lives and say that now on we will live together. So this is also judged by the legal system, that how people live together, what happens in scenario A, what happens in scenario B, what happens in scenario C. So the law that we have right now has been developed around this institution, that these people are heterosexual. Now these become homosexual, let's say, and a marriage is considered between both, whether they are female or they are male. Then it becomes a problem for the law also, that which one is to be considered a husband here, which one is to be considered a wife here, what is their individual role in the marriage system, and how it is to be governed. So in the context, there is a need to look into the matter of same-sex marriage and its related issues. So let's see what are the arguments that favor the same-sex marriage. So opposing same-sex marriage by saying it will end the human race. So this prospect I have already explained, that in case of absence of two heterosexual partners, this thing cannot take place. The meiosis and the fertilization cannot take place. That's why the race cannot progress further. So this was an argument. So it's saying that argument is unreasonable because adoption is a solution for queer couples who do not want to raise children. So the argument is saying that they can adopt children basically produced by other heterosexual parents. But now the question becomes again that who will play the role of a father? Who will play the role of a mother in the same-sex marriage? One thing is elitist concept that the demand for marriage equality comes from less economically privileged people who need legal protection. Claiming that it's a matter for urban elites is deceptive. That means the story of Leela and Urmila, two police women who were suspended and locked up for getting married in 1987, shows the discrimination faced by LGBTQ people in society. So is it an elitist concept? This is another problem because it is seen that oftentimes only the elitist people have been actually privileged enough to display their problems in the society. They are once privileged enough or wealthy enough to come up with the fact that they can display their problems and get them solved. So this is another problem. Let's say it's a nationwide problem, it's a countrywide problem, and not specifically related to the elitist society. Even the less privileged or economically weaker society can have issues such as non-representation of the same-sex attraction or marriage institution, but they may not be able to show it up on a national display because of their social and economical conditions. Now the next thing is that extend Special Marriage Act to queer Indians. That basically they want to use the gender neutral languages like spouse instead of husband or wife. The problem here is that husband and wife are not only terms, but they have both social and legal implications. Now, this issue cannot be solved by just changing the term to spouse. However, this argument can be used in favor. One thing is the Special Marriage Act allowed for a Bengali Hindu and an Anglo-Indian Roman Catholic to marry in 2006, and they hope this legislation will be extended to queer Indians. One thing is cohabitation as a fundamental right. So this argument is very strong. The Chief Justice of India acknowledged that cohabitation is a fundamental right. That means you cannot stop two people, whether they are male or female or male-female couple, from living together if they want to live together. So basically you cannot stop people from living together. It's a fundamental right, and it is the government's obligation to legally recognize the social impact of such relationships. So we cannot just ignore what's already happening and can happen fundamentally. If two people want to live together, they can live together. If they want to live as a couple, then the law must govern that what happens to such couple. If they want to marry, then there should be a law that what happens if they want to do so. So the justice suggested that recognition. So this is the main important portion. You can say that if you want to live together, just go live together. What is the problem here? If you are even two female, you want to marry and live together, then rent a flat and live together. What is the problem here? The problem is the legal recognition. The problem is the social recognition. So what is the standpoint of the legal and the social systems towards the institutions of these kind? So that is the debate here. That means that this recognition is needed for such relationship to receive certain benefits, but not necessarily as marriage. The CJI emphasized the importance of providing a sense of security and social welfare for people in such relationships. The court suggested labels like contract or partnership instead of marriage. The government said that there is no fundamental right to seek recognition of same-sex relationship as marriage. So this is the government's standpoint, and it is in debate with the Supreme Court also. So we have been talking about marriages up until now. So Supreme Court is saying, okay, all right, if you don't want to recognize it as marriage, you can say it is a contract or a partnership. The Supreme Court of India discussed the recognition of cohabitation as a fundamental right for same-sex couples, which would entitle them to benefit without being equated to marriage. One more thing is assimilation of same-sex couples. So the CGI has emphasized the need to assimilate same-sex couples into society rather than ostracizing them. So when we talk about the society or social changes, we cannot enforce them legally. It is just like accepting people with HIV/AIDS. So that was a big issue. It needed some kind of education and encouragement, awakening in the society, rather than the legal methods. Alright. So the decriminalization of section 377 of the IPC, that was homosexuality would have amounted to a crime earlier, has recognized the existence of same-sex relationship. So there are of course more people aware about the homosexual relationships than earlier period, and now there is of course more acceptance in the society also, but it will take some time in the future for this to sternly governed. So government should address the practical issues faced by same-sex couples such as joint bank accounts and entitlement to pension and gratuity. So these are the problems that we earlier talked about, that these laws are built around the heterosexual institution of marriage, and this is a change that is very drastic, that is expected to come in the future. It is trying to build up, and in future of course it will be there, just like all the developed societies or the countries, but it is a step by step that we need to jump. One thing is Indian culture and value system. In culturally rich India, where social norms and obligations wield significant influence, the acceptance of same-sex relationship still poses a challenge even after the legal recognition. So it goes against the traditional values and beliefs in the Indian society. That is true. However, the recognition of same-sex marriage adds to the diversity also of relationship that exist in the society. So this we talked about in the fraternity video as well, that there will be fraternity only when there will be an acceptance of the diversity. One thing is human dignity, that this was a part of preamble also. Then we talked about fraternity, we talked about this. So in Navtesh Singh Johar versus Union of India case, this is a very important case when it comes to same-sex marriages. The Supreme Court granted same-sex couple the freedom to lead a dignified private life. One more argument is biological gender is not absolute. So Supreme Court of India says that biological gender is not absolute and gender is more complex, basically more fluid than just one's genitals. There is absolutely no concept of a man or a woman. Absolute concept. So this we can talk about in biological terms, in anthropological terms. But this is further than the purview of our discussion, so we'll just skip it. You can read about it more on the internet with the term gender fluidity or sexuality. One more thing is bouquet of rights being denied. So LGBTQ community is being denied important legal benefits like tax benefit, medical rights, inheritance, adoption. So this is the same issue that we talk, that law is right now developed around the heterosexual institution of marriage, and homosexuals cannot claim it because there is a lot of disparity between who is a husband here, who is what is the social role of the two people. So this was one thing. Let's see what are the arguments against. So it's against the religious definition of marriage. So marriage has been traditionally between a man and a woman. So this just goes against the tradition. Second thing is legitimate interest of the state. So state has a legitimate interest in regulating marriage and personal relationship as seen in laws regarding to age of consent, prohibited degree of marriage and divorce. So simply two things again, social and legal. And this is something which includes both. So becomes very complex issue for the state. And state would like no changes in what has been fine for the country since last 100 years or 80 years. So this is the debate. Overall, state doesn't want to change any law or any type of mechanism or regulatory framework right now for what is the issue of, let's say, 7-8% people. But it is necessary, it is fundamentally their right, and they must seek it now by the legal means. Now, the legal means cannot enforce a social change. This is the major issue here. So, legitimate of interest of state. So, this is why state has an interest here socially, both in the, let's say, age of consent, prohibited degree of marriages, divorce, etc. So, this goes against the same-sex marriages. One more thing is that right to marry is not absolute and subject to state laws. That means if for two people to marry, let's say there are A and B, they cannot marry in all the conditions. They have to go through the certain laws. That means if let's say A is married to C, now he cannot marry B even if they both want to. Let's say A's age is only 15 years of age, B's age is let's say 25, so they cannot marry because A is not of age. So of course marriage is not an absolute law or absolute right. It needs to go through certain laws. So it is the same with the marriage with same sex. So right now if laws do not allow the same sex partners to get married, so they cannot marry. So just like a parent cannot claim absolute control over their child's education, individuals cannot claim absolute control over their personal relationships. So state can claim legitimate interest in regulating when to marry, that means age, how many times to marry, so basically one, whom to marry, how to separate, and laws on bestiality or incest. Bestiality is basically having sex with animals, incest is basically having sex with own family members. So it all goes against laws. So this may include the marriages with the gender of same sex. One more thing is the right to privacy. So in 2017, you must have all heard about the Puttaswamy judgment. The Supreme Court recognized the right to privacy as a fundamental right and stated that the sexual orientation is a crucial part of one's identity must be protected without discrimination. However, privacy exists, but it cannot be extended to marriage, which has a necessary public element. Consenting sexual relationship between adults are private, but marriage has a public aspect that cannot be ignored. So yes, it's a private matter who you marry. Let's say A marries B. If it's their both private matter. If they want to have sex with each other, it's their private matter. But once they are married, so it becomes a social element. Now there is cohabitation, there is a family building, there is everything. They are open to society as partners. So it has a social element and it cannot come as an absolutely private concept. Other things are legislation by parliament. So only parliament has the authority to decide on same-sex marriages, not Supreme Court, because it will be judicial overreach, as it is a matter of democratic right and courts should not legislate on the issue. So these are the arguments which are in against. It's not the truth or reality. So there could be potential unintended consequences in law and the complexity of dealing with the various permutation and combination of gender falling under the LGBTQIA community, which has 72 categories. Interpreting the law, so a Special Marriage Act cannot be interpreted to include same-sex marriage because the act's entire architecture would be need to be examined again, not just a few words. So it's not like you can just change husband and wife to spouse and everything will change all of a sudden. The whole law, the whole framework which India has developed on years and years later, it will be need to be re-examined. So it's unclear who would have these rights in same-sex marriage, which are like the acts provide specific rights to a wife. Alright, so who will be the wife then? Even if you change the term to spouse, eventually who gets the rights that are allotted to a wife? So additionally, allowing one party in same-sex marriage as having a specific right could create a problem for the heterosexual marriages. That means if let's say one says that I am the wife in the marriage and give me all the rights which should be allotted to wife. Now the second partner claims after a year that sorry, now I am playing the role of the wife in our marriage and now transfer the right to me. So a new set of laws will have to be made for all these problems, all the permutations and combinations which may arrive with this new thing of same-sex marriages. One more thing is law provides special rights to wife, like the law says that the wife acquires the domicile of the husband upon marriage. So who will be the wife in same-sex marriage? Issue of divorce under the SMA, a wife may seek divorce on grounds that a husband has been guilty of rape, sodomy, or bestiality. Other things are issue with adoption of children. So this is a major impact. Let's say there must be some difference in all the three cases. Let's say a child A in the first case is adopted by heterosexual parents. It gets the presence of both a male and female. In the second case, they are adopted by both male. In the third case, they are adopted by both female. So there must be some difference in all the three cases. Now, if the same-sex marriages are allowed and the children are allowed to be adopted, so it basically makes that there is no difference psychologically towards the children. So there is also issue. It can also lead to social stigma, discrimination, negative impact on the child's emotional and psychological well-being. One thing is gender terms. Argument that gender terms like mother and father, husband, wife would be problematic in same-sex marriages. So both social and legal impacts basically. But you can make a list of these arguments both to and fro, make a chart and keep it saved in your notes so that you can use it in the interview and in the mains answer writing. So what is the way forward? So first is raise awareness. So for any social changes, two types of changes are necessary here, social and legal. So for social changes, you can raise awareness or basically educate others. Other thing is legal reforms. So here legally we need some reforms. All right. One thing is dialogue and engagement. So it again comes to the education purview only. Other is legal challenges. So Indian community can challenge the constitutionality of the current laws that prevent same-sex marriage in court. Such legal challenges can help establish a legal precedent that will pave the way for the legalization of the same-sex marriage. The legalization of same-sex marriage requires a concerned effort from all stakeholders, including the community, the government, the civil society, and religious leaders. By working together, we can create a more inclusive society where everyone has the right to love and marry whomsoever they choose, regardless of their gender. So this is the conclusion. What you can do now is to make simple notes based on the constitutional aspects of the SMA and the fundamental rights, that which fundamental rights govern these things. The arguments in both pro and against in one simple line. Just put the headings and write a concurrent way forward. You can copy from here also. This is a good way forward, so that you can copy the same thing in the exam. You can just write an introduction also, one line introduction, and put some biological aspects also if you want to. Alright, so way forward should be very balanced, should not be going toward one side or other, should not reflect personal ideas also. So that's all for today's lecture. I hope you liked it. We'll come up with more issues, more questions in the next video. This is Yatharth here signing off. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Keep studying and be bright.